I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about how we in the university system around the United States, of which more than 100 now have risk management programs, either just beginning or really advanced, are trying to help capture the shift, help high school kids capture the shift into a brand new world. So it's not going to be as technical as your previous speakers, but remember we're talking about 18-year-old kids here. And I think if they saw this as a freshman, they'd freak out in a big way. I could be wrong. But again, Hank Watkins, just brief background. I've been in the, thank you, Caroline, it's actually 46 years, but that's okay. No, I worked primarily for Chubb, Marsh, and then the last 15 years at Lloyd's. Had a great experience in the industry and decided about 2 years ago that I wanted to do something different. So I had been on the board of overseers at the Greenberg School at St. John's University in New York for about 15 years, most of my time at Lloyd's. And when I was talking to some people there about what's next, I found out that the executive director was retiring at age 82. He's still out there flying his own plane and doing things for us. Just goes to show you, very few people actually leave this industry. We tell that a lot to the high school kids and their parents. You've got a lifelong career, many opportunities after you retire to do things that keep you engaged. And I don't think many industries can say that. So I ended up going to work there 18 months ago and have found it to be a fascinating transition into a world that I knew pretty well when I was about 21 years old, but really hadn't spent much time in since then. So St. John's University, you may know us for basketball. We've had a couple really good years in the Big East, but we're based in Queens, New York. 1870 is when it was established. It's a Vincentian Catholic university, but it's secular. Kids come from all backgrounds from all over the world to our school, to our campus. The Greenberg School, which I'll talk about in a second, is over in Manhattan. And we're one of the few, if any, universities offering RMI programs that actually have a commute for their students. Most of the kids live either at home, it's a big commuter school, or they live on campus, and they end up taking a couple of different subways to get to campus. They complain about it to no end as freshmen, but once they realize that that's probably part of the deal if you're going to live and work in New York City, they accept it, and they really grow up quickly just by riding public transportation in New York City. We also have campuses in Rome, Paris, and Limerick Island, much smaller, but that's where a lot of the students go for their semester abroad. Quick peek at our undergrad programs. We have 5 colleges plus a law school. At the bottom there is the Peter J. Tobin College of Business. That's where the Greenberg School sits. We, again, offer undergrad and graduate degrees in risk management, actuarial science, and an ERM is probably our most popular graduate degree. Kids who are thinking about how do I expedite my career projection, or yourselves, enterprise risk management is certainly something, irrespective of the insurance or financial services industry you're in, that has become really popular. I'm almost done pitching St. John's because I want to focus really on the amazing schools out there. People oftentimes suggest that we all compete against each other, and we don't, though. We're all friends. A lot of the executive directors and deans of the other schools are good friends of mine I've known over the years. Many of them, Chris and Giacone down at USC in LA, Pat Hanley up at UNLV, he just started their program. Both former insurance industry executives who retired and decided to go into this line of work. So there's a lot of people out there. We're all good friends. But quickly on the Greenberg School, we're the oldest in the industry. We started back in 1901 as the Insurance Society of New York, evolved into the College of Insurance in 1962. Is Patrick Armstrong here? He was a graduate, I learned last night, of the College of Insurance. And so you get a couple of College of Insurance people. I wasn't. I went to a big public school in the Bay Area. But you get a couple of us talking about it, everyone else gets bored to death. So kudos to Patrick. If anybody else went to St. John's, that's great. In 2001, about 2 months before 9/11, St. John's and the College of Insurance merged. And it was a pretty tumultuous couple of years. Ultimately, the campus relocated from downtown, about 2 blocks from Ground Zero, up to Astor Place, where we are today. I'm always the oldest person in that neighborhood. We're surrounded by NYU, Cooper Union, St. John's. It's a pretty vibrant area. And then we were renamed in 2020 the Maurice R. Greenberg School of Risk Management. That's after Hank Greenberg at AIG. And he donated at the time to St. John's the largest single donation ever. So he got his name in the door. He's also sponsored a great program at Georgia State. So that's the other Greenberg school, in case you're wondering. We're number 11 ranking in the U.S. News World Report. That's really important. There's about, like I said, 100 schools that are in this type of industry, educating future leaders in our industry. Parents look at this. Students sort of look at it. They look more like, what's the campus environment like? What are the sports teams like? That kind of stuff. We're really big in actuarial science. Gamma Iota Sigma is a collegiate fraternity that has young men and women across the country and in Canada engaging in a lot of off-campus activities that teach them leadership, teach them how to comport themselves in a professional environment. They go to different universities for competitions every year. It's pretty exciting to see these kids develop from freshmen into seniors that way. And we have the Thrower Center, named after a former executive director of the program, that we aren't alone in this. A lot of schools do this, but I just want to point out real quickly why it's so important. And for those of you who might be considering graduates from an RMI program to enter your school, enter your companies, you can probably be pretty confident they've been through a lot of these type of programs. Career fairs are a big deal. I think we've all been to those. That's pretty self-explanatory. Speakers from the industry. We have the advantage of being in New York, where there's speakers and potential speakers everywhere. You just look out the window, you can grab someone who's an executive, who's a client manager, an account manager, a claims person, an attorney, who's happy to come speak to our students. So those of you who live near universities with these programs, if you haven't already, I encourage you to go talk to the dean, talk to the executive director, offer yourself as a panelist. Heck, put together a panel. If you have interest in AI, which you all do, all the schools are desperate to hear from industry leaders on that. Whatever your position might be in the firm, get a couple of colleagues together, maybe some competitors, go to the dean, present yourselves as panelists, and they would love it. Come speak at lunch hour, whatever. The interaction with the industry is super important for these students and for the faculty, because don't forget, the faculty primarily come from academia, super smart, big brains, but when it comes down to real-world experience, they like to talk to people like us to keep their finger on the pulse. Professionalism and dining etiquette, don't laugh, but you'd be surprised at how a lot of these freshmen show up these days. They're distracted a lot by the handheld devices that we all carry. They don't always have a great clue as to how they're supposed to operate in a professional environment. So we have a mandatory class on professionalism for all freshmen. Basically teach them dining etiquette, super important, but also how to manage conflict, what to do when your boss asks you to stay 2 hours late one night when you really wanted to see your friends. All these things that are really important to young people. How do they interact with people at seminars, at conferences, when they ultimately get the chance to do that? Just all the different types of things that we've all learned, maybe the hard way. I certainly did. We're trying to get them teed up at 18 or 19 years old to understand this. And we emphasize it's not about taking away your personality. It's not about making you a fake person. It's really about teaching you how to show up with your best possible presentation to people in this career we hope you're going to engage in. Super important. Resume prep, although you might say just go to AI, it'll build it for you. You lose all elements of critical thinking when you have the resume built on AI. We really try to help them think about, what do I bring at age 18 or 19 to a prospective employer for an internship this summer? Build it up. Use AI if you need to. And by the way, all students use AI now. A couple of years ago, most professors that I had met, either at our school or elsewhere, were adamantly opposed to it. If I find a student uses it, they're going to be failed. Some are pretty harsh on this. Others would say, they can write a paper with AI, but if I point to page 17, paragraph 3, close the paper and say, what did you say or mean? And if they can't articulate, then they get an F. All that's gone now. All faculty that I've spoken to have accepted the fact that it's part of life. They use it. So it's really, we're in a transition stage, not just in the broader economy, but certainly in academia, as to how do we take advantage of this and how do we do it quickly. Interview skills training. We oftentimes have brokers and underwriters come in and teach classes about interviewing. They do a lot of role playing, super important. Networking and mentorship. Again, if you're interested in helping out a local school and you only have a couple hours a month, maybe offer to be a mentor. There's nothing better for a young person to be hooked up with somebody in the industry who's willing to spend an hour or two, maybe 3 hours a month, just being their friend. I've done that a lot over the course of my career, and it's amazing to see these kids now in their late 20s, early 30s, and still be connected with them, and think that maybe you had a little bit to do with helping them be successful. Shadow programs and internships, again, really important to get the kids out there. I would venture to guess or to say, based on my conversations with a lot of the companies our students intern with, is that they all get exposed to AI. They're a sophomore with a summer internship. They're getting exposed to how those companies are using AI. So I'm not as concerned about the kids being so fearful of it they stop functioning, but we're trying really hard to get them comfortable with it. And conferences like this are really important. I might next time beg if we can have a couple students show up and maybe have them as ambassadors back to our school. And whatever town you might be in, maybe you invite some of the local risk management programs to show up with kids. You'd be shocked at how prepared these kids are for the future. And then we all pretty much, again, I'm speaking for the industry, have pretty powerful placement rates. It's usually 85 to 90% of graduating seniors go on to a pretty good job in the industry. The others either are, unfortunately, international students who are having a hard time getting a visa, or they decide to go to law school or whatever, right? But I've not yet met any that say, this isn't for me after 4 years. Key stakeholder engagement is critical. I've just listed a few of these organizations. The Association of Professional Insurance Women has been fantastic across the entire country, mentoring young women, getting them internships, offering scholarships, having luncheons where they have their leader of the year and they invite students and present scholarships. You've probably all been to some of these events. It's super important for the kids to be part of that. The Loss Executives Association is a national organization focused on the claim industry. When I arrived at St. John's a year and a half ago, claims wasn't even a thing. So we have progressed that conversation quite a bit, and we now have some students getting into the claims side of the business. AI is huge in claims, obviously. I think every major carrier now has an ingesting engine to help the customer who knows more about the claim that they're having than anybody else to input the initial information, and ultimately, if a person needs to take over, they do. So a lot of progress there. Captives, the Vermont Captive Insurance Association is now one of our best friends. They invite our students up for their annual conference. And then RIMS is huge. We always send 8 or 9 or 10 students to RIMS every year. The Spencer Foundation's a big partner. We have a leadership development course that we offer to juniors and seniors, and it's run by an external organization called LDR Leadership. And they're based down in Virginia. They're all former Army Rangers, and they come to our campus a couple times a year for weekend seminars. They're on the weekend because we want the students to obviously focus on their schoolwork during the week, but also if you're going to be part of this leadership initiative we're trying to build, a weekend's not a big deal. Just come. I go to it with them. And a lot of the conversation is around the typical leadership elements you'd find and have seen in your careers. But these guys also have half a day of role playing. They basically set the kids in different groups. They present real life scenarios that they experienced in Afghanistan and Iraq. They all leave the base to go on some mission. Everything's locked down tight. They know exactly what they're going to do. Within an hour, the whole thing falls apart. And what would you do? And these kids have to immediately make a statement as to what would I do. Usually they're wrong, and that's okay. The message is that in major conflict, in challenges in life, whether it's on a battlefield, in business, in your personal life, you're going to face conflicts that you've never anticipated. You're going to have to act pretty quickly and just have in the back of your mind at all times how something might impact your life and how you might react to it. And it's amazing to see these sophomores and juniors come out of these weekends, standing taller and feeling really good about it. We have a global destination course, which is pretty exciting. Every year we take 20 students to London, to Zurich, and Munich. In 2025, we took the 10 graduate students to Dubai. That was fascinating. We basically learned that with all the capital there, all the risk, and this is well before the Gulf War started, they're desperate for information from industry leaders, whether it's London, the US, elsewhere in Europe, for just help us understand risk management, help us understand risk transfer, enterprise risk management. So we were going to go back this year, the first week of March, and we had an ERM summit all planned during Ramadan, so we were very respectful, only 4 hours, not 8. Really interesting how you run a conference here, but we had over 100 people signed up. We had Marsh as our local sponsor, and woke up on Saturday morning in London on February 28th, and we all know what happened, right? So we quickly pivoted to Germany, where we ended up meeting with a bunch of carriers there. But a lot of schools do this now, and I'm always happy to help them find their way around different parts of Europe and London, who to meet with, what to do. We typically break our students up into groups of 2 when they're in London, and they go all around the marketplace, just as many of you would when you go there. You don't go 10 at a time and sit in a room and get spoken to for 3 hours. We split them up into pairs for 4 meetings across an entire day, and they really have to go as though they're a risk manager or a broker or an MGA looking for capacity, and they learn a heck of a lot about that. Our number 1 rule in these trips is no cell phones anywhere in a meeting, except you go in the hallway, do what you want, but no laptops, no cell phones, and typically there's 100% compliance. Because we're just trying to, again, embed in them the importance of being present, of always being there, and whether or not you believe in what I'm telling you, the people that are speaking to us and engaging with us don't have to be here. You know, they're doing this because they want to perpetuate the pipeline of talent. They're there because they like us, and you just need to be respectful, and they really, really are. And I'll say that for all students that go over to London. You probably see on LinkedIn all the time, groups of students, big smiles, at Lloyd's or somewhere, our kids in 2025. Most of these kids have never been to Europe, never been out of the country. A lot of them were just blown away by the experience. Thought leadership, I talked about our ERM forums, we do that, NatCat conference. We're doing an insurance regulation conference in a couple weeks in New York, and the Art at Risk conference. Again, we're trying to appeal to people in the industry who might have a passion for something. You probably all know Scott Galloway. He claims that having a passion for what you do is no reason to follow a career path. He says all the wealthy people in the world started their careers in iron ore smelting, then they developed a passion after they becoming billionaires. But I still think as a young person, you can follow your passion into our industry. If you like art, if you like horses, if you like athletics, entertainment, there's a place as a broker, an MGA, carrier for you. You should also know that any student who's studying risk management, actuarial science as an undergrad would also be receiving a whole breadth of courses in the business school that they're in, whether it's at our school or across the country. So they come out with a pretty broad range of skill sets. They're not expert in anything, but they can probably adapt themselves pretty quickly to whatever part of your business you might find a home for them in. Speaking of AI, so we are pretty happy about starting an AI and insurance class for undergrads this fall. We found a 20-year veteran of Insurtech out in Los Angeles to become an adjunct professor. He's building the course right now. But if anyone in this room is interested in offering advice, how we might structure a program, I would welcome it. I think we're fairly far down the road, but as this changes daily and hourly, we're always open to suggestions. I think we might be the first university with a risk management program that's focusing on AI and insurance. So we're pretty excited about that. We also are going to run a surplus lines program, and we're working through a Spencer Foundation grant, which was much appreciated. And we're also collaborating with the University of Georgia. Go Dogs, right? I know there's a couple of you graduates in here to help us so that as we present this program, they're doing the same thing down there. We want to present to students, irrespective of the university, a common language around the excess and surplus lines side of the business. You know, I spent a lot of my career in that. I absolutely love it. When I first got to St. John's, have you guys heard of E&S and what's that? So great opportunity for us to help these kids find a new niche. I talked about Gamma Iota Sigma. Again, there are over 100 chapters in the US and Canada. I want to show you this real quickly. This is from the EAB, which is an advisory business to universities about how they go about recruiting, how they might build classroom structures, curriculum, et cetera. A lot of universities subscribe to their services. This is just a broad look at what a lot of college undergrads are studying, or going to be studying when they enter college this fall. I'll just look at the all students on the left there. Thankfully, health professions and sciences are still very, very important, for all of us in the future. It's great to have young people thinking about that. Engineering technology, that's clearly something that a lot of kids with a math aptitude are very focused on. Business, thankfully for all of us, is important. And then you go down the line, you look at computer science there, number 6. That was probably a lot higher in the ranking 5 or 10 years ago. It's still there. Education, that's important. Just wanted to share this with you, that out of the 930 or 40,000 students that were interviewed for this, business is number 3 across the board. Challenges that we're all facing now, especially in the Midwest and Northeast, are around what we call this demographic cliff. There's been a steady decline over the past couple of years, and it'll continue until about 2030 in the number of high school students that are graduating high school. Or I should restate that, the number of seniors that are there to begin with. There are a lot fewer kids being born after the financial crisis back in 2009, 2010. A lot of kids, as we know now, are rethinking how they spend the next 4 years of their life after age 18. College is expensive. If I become a plumber, I can sell my business to a private equity firm and monetize that after 30 years. There's all kinds of reasons why young people are rethinking the 4-year college experience. So we're seeing not just that ourselves, we're the regional down there at the bottom. The nationals would be the top public universities that you're all familiar with. The elites would be the Ivy League, the Stanfords, et cetera. All of us are going to face over the next couple of years a decline in enrollment. The elite schools, probably the least impact, but as you go down the line, it's affecting all of us. So something we're really aware of. That even pushes us more and more to interact with parents of high school kids as young as sophomores and juniors, to help them understand that if your child comes to a program like ours or any of the others out there in the country, no guarantees, but if they study, they do well, they take advantage of all that we have to offer, they're going to exit as a senior in college with a really good job career path that's only going to accelerate through all the post-graduation support that they get. A lot of parents now get that. We still say insurance. I don't know how to get away from that term. It is what we do. I've had arguments with people, conversations. Is it cool or sexy? I'll never suggest it's sexy or has to be. It's too serious of a proposition. But I've got a slide in that in a second about if it's cool or not. College Vine is an AI recruitment tool that we're using. We have for a couple years now. You basically subscribe to it, and it enables students to go into this College Vine and input their aspirations, their college experience, what they think they might want to do. And it comes back with 7 or 8, maybe 10 universities around the country that could be a good fit, and here's why. So we're pretty happy with how that's played out. This next one, Cristo Rey Brooklyn, we're really proud about. Cristo Rey is a network of Catholic high schools around the country. There are about 41 of them now. They're based in Chicago. And we've partnered with them, with their Brooklyn school. Earlier this year, we got about 10 members of our board of directors. Our big board is about 50 CEOs of major brokers and insurance companies around the country, a few law firms and consulting firms. We got 10 of them to take 20 students once a week for an entire day for an entire school year. And it's been really successful. This is the first year we've done this. It's a pilot. But you have these young kids with their school uniforms on, taking the subway as a sophomore or junior in high school over to Manhattan, the gleaming city, coming out of Brooklyn. They spend an entire day in an insurance company or a broker. They're treated like gold because everybody wants to help. And 1 week is tolerable for any company, one day a week rather. We just had a sort of a year-end wrap-up on how it all went, met with a bunch of the students, and just to demonstrate how far we have to go to perpetuate our interest in the business and make sure kids get it. Of the 10 that we talked to across the table, we had a really good conversation. Only one found the insurance industry to be exciting. He started to educate us about cyber risk. And he said, do you guys understand how cool cyber risk is? And the other ones really appreciated the opportunity, but they wanted to be marine biologists. One wanted to be an astronaut. So God love them, right? They're kids. But we're just going to keep trying All of our companies have signed up again to take next fall a whole new cohort. We're going to try and get 30 now students placed. So I know a lot of you are out there thinking about how to engage high school kids. Maybe you already do, but again, going to speak to high schools about what you do, maybe finding opportunities like this to mentor them, bring them in for a day a week, it makes a huge difference. Another one is called Hope Ignites. They're a secular organization. They're based in St. Louis. We're going to bring about 80 of their member high school students from around the country to our St. John's campus in Queens for a boot camp this summer. To basically, they're all rising seniors, so this is their time to think about where do I go to college. And they're going to spend time at the Greenberg School. We're going to take them to a Yankee game. They're going to have a lot of lectures from finance, from insurance, from other executives in our local industries about just what's going on in our area. So it's a pilot again. We're excited to do that. And then the bottom was just a College Advantage program. We give scholarships to actuarial science students at Bronx Technical High School. There are about 30 of them signed up, and they get 3 credits of college if they go to St. John's, and a stipend to do this. So there's just a lot of ways that we're all trying to encourage high school kids to embrace our industry. I was talking to someone last night, and he's spot on about the fact that 400,000 people are going to be leaving the industry in the coming years. Super important. The biggest issue is that fewer than 5% of millennials and Gen Z are interested in our business because they don't know about it. So I keep harping on this with everybody who will listen to me. Talk to your neighbors' kids, talk to your nieces and nephews, anybody who's of high school age. Tell them how great your business is and what you're doing, and you just got to keep at it because eventually the light bulb will go off. It's important that they'll have a job, a career path, but also if they can do something meaningful, that's going to matter a lot to them. It's a great opportunity for our industry to get much better at this. Is insurance a cool business? I ask Claude this every couple days. Seriously, I do it. It's going to skip ahead of me. Okay. You sell a promise. The product is essentially a financial peace of mind, right? You're going to take money now in exchange for something that might not happen. And this next one, the inversion of normal business logic, bottom line is it talks about what Warren Buffett made his fortune on, the float. The last sentences are you essentially it's like getting an interest-free loan from your customers. You take the premium, you use it, you invest it to pay for a claim that may never happen. The next one here is it's fundamentally about understanding risk. We're all in the business of making sophisticated bets about the future. The social utility angle, young people are really, really focused on how can they make a difference in society. Insurance makes a big effort on that. It talks about, and this is just Claude speaking, the coolest niches are cat modeling, parametric triggered coverage, cyber risk, etc. On the flip side, it's uncool. And we all know why, because it's heavily regulated. That's important, right? You got to have financial services regulated. It's capital intensive and can be slow moving. Much of the work is grinding through underwriting standards, claims, and compliance. AI can maybe solve that. You're often the bad guy when you raise rates or don't pay claims as quickly as people like. And cat events can destroy a year's worth of profit. We all know this. Other than last night, it's not exactly cocktail party conversation. And the bottom line is it's not flashy, but it's very stimulating and does a lot of good for society. Employment opportunities are everywhere, not just in our industry, but in consulting, manufacturing. Think of all the risk managers out there who've made a career in a Fortune 500 company. Government, some students go into regulation. There's a really good pathway there after 4 or 5 years as a state regulator to go into consulting, any number of other firms who will hire you for your experience. I talk a lot to the finance people over at our business school about considering a career in our industry, because again, they've got blinders on. They want to be Wall Street people. Wall Street's just next door. But I try to educate them on the fact that the global insurance industry has more money than most other industries. Historically, it has. Perhaps on paper, not anymore. But investments in real estate, their assets are invested all over the place. And you can be a finance person in an insurance company making a great living. And when they start thinking about that, it kind of changes the perspective on what we're all about. A lot of opportunity there. So talking about what motivates talent, and this is taken from talking to a lot of people in the industry that I'm in touch with, talking about young people. I've had a couple students say to me when they're freshmen or seniors or sophomores, they ask them, so what's going to motivate you to get a job when you're out of here? And a couple have said to me, well, I want to be able to walk to work. And so I said, well, good luck to you. I'm going to work on that, because that's probably not the best approach to take to interviewing. But the majority of them, they get it. They're not that flippant. Autonomy and trust is critical for young people. They're a lot more advanced than perhaps we give them credit for in how they perceive themselves going forward in the world. They want to have autonomy, really important. Engagement with the communities, that's as important as it's ever been. And again, ourselves and all the schools that offer these programs spend a lot of time, usually on weekends, with their students out there in the community doing all types of community service, which is fantastic. They want to do meaningful things with and for others. Investing in innovation is critical. However you define innovation, students want to know that you're not just plodding along doing things the way they always work because they worked, but thinking about the future and investing in chances, whether they fail or succeed. Personalized benefits, we've all heard about. They want the sky and the moon before they even graduate. So that's important. Well-being is critical. We've all heard a lot of senior executives lately talk more about the importance of mental health, acknowledging that, especially post-COVID, how important that conversation is with all your employees. And I kudos to those who have really stepped up that approach to taking care of people. The students all want this to be a big part of their next step. And then in career support, they like to have a pathway, a pretty clear representation of what it could look like for them. Access to leadership is everything. There's no better way to encourage enthusiasm in a young person than to have the CEO spend a half an hour with a group of them, take them to lunch, whatever. It's amazing. Mobility is important. Learning opportunities, constantly learning. Mentoring with senior folks is really important. And then being rewarded, maybe not financially always, but just for their skills and their experience. Something we try to remind recent graduates of is that you've come from a good program, good reputation, you're smart, you're ambitious. You're going to get an offer in about 2 years from 3 or 4 competitors of your current employer. Be super careful how you perceive that. Talk to trusted people, not your boss, because at that point, really, what do you have to offer? You're going to be given maybe more money, which is great. You're going to spend it all, and it's going to be taxed, because all of a sudden you're rich, right? You're going to go buy stuff that you probably didn't need. If you're thinking of leaving a company, also remember at that early age, you're going to have a target on your back, because the new people are hiring you because they perceive you're going to bring them a lot of business. So there's a lot of reasons just to consider before you jump why you're doing this. We all know people who've moved 3 or 4 times in 10 years. There are reasons for this, I'm sure, but if it's just to get more money, I can't emphasize enough to these students how that's probably the wrong approach. When you've been in the business 20 or 25 years, more money is going to be real more money. And that's the time you want to think about taking on a lot more responsibility. But it's a constant challenge to keep it focused on staying in the right place for the right time. And as far as you're looking at how do you make your employees brand ambassadors, super important. That's a term that I've seen a lot more now from leaders of companies. In a room full of competitors, would your employees stand up and profess their loyalty, talk about how great their company is? That's really important. It means a lot more than perhaps reading it on a post somewhere. And are you making the most of referrals? If there are any recruiters in the room, love what you guys do. But employees can be some of the best recruiters amongst their peers for your company. And then how are you turning culture into content? This is something the World Economic Forum comes out with this global risk report every January or February. And it essentially looks at 4 or 5 major global issues, geopolitical, environmental, economic, societal, that impact all of us. They have their documents over 100 pages. It's fascinating to read through it. They talk about the interconnectedness of all the major threats in the world and how they impact all of us. And we just reflect back on how our lives were in late February and how now the entire world is impacted what's going on over in the Gulf there. It's really important for young people to understand this. In the curriculum, we teach them a lot of technical aspects of the industry, but we also embed in their brains the importance of being aware of all the global issues that are out there, because you'll come across a lot smarter to your future employers, ultimately when you have clients, and you can understand what they're going through, whether it's supply chain issues, whatever the challenges might be. It's not just about maybe finding them the best price and moving on. It's really understanding what makes their business tick, and they'll appreciate the conversation. That'll give you a chance to spend more time with them perhaps than you would if you were just selling that policy and moving on. So I can't say that this connects with the freshmen or sophomores that easily, because you don't want to make it sound like the world's so crazy and risky that we're all going to be in a lot of trouble. But to encourage them just to think through how they can monetize their education by becoming a preacher or a deliverer of resilient solutions to people in the future, I think that makes a ton of sense. So we constantly want to do that with them. And then finally, this is EC3, London. A lot of you have business over there. I remember in 1986 when little old Lloyd's was the tallest building in that neighborhood. You can barely see it now behind the Gherkin. But it's a fascinating place to get young people encouraged about, because everything that we do in our industry ultimately ends up, if it's risk transfer or even new capital, in London, whether it's Lloyd's or the company market. There's over $100 billion in premium transacted there every year in insurance and reinsurance. And whether students go there, young people go there, just to have an understanding of how that market works and how it can help build careers is something that we try to teach our students about as well. So we at St. John's, the Greenberg School, and again, the more than 100 universities around the country and in Canada are working really hard to build that pipeline of talent to help all of you perpetuate this great industry. We need your help. We need your advice, your engagement, anything you can do and sometimes it's financial. That's important because we give a lot of scholarships to these kids. A lot of them, they're first generation. They come from families whose parents never went to college. Being a private school, it's pretty expensive, so we narrow the gap quite a bit. But that's important, but as important is just having engagement in the industry that you're telling these young people is going to be a big part of their future is critical. So I think we can all contribute one way or the other to helping the schools that are near where we live accomplish that. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.